I'm joined now by Ryan Fowler, and Ryan is one of my colleagues over at the draftnetwork.com. I've really gotten to enjoy working with Ryan over the last year or so. He's now a full-time member of our staff, and he's got great football opinions, especially about the Washington Commanders, where he was a former staff writer during the time that Tim Settle was there. For 3 of the 4 years that Tim Settle was with Washington, Ryan was part of the organization. And so he's here today to give us some insight on the Bills' new defensive tackle. So, Ryan, welcome to Locked On Bills, and thanks for giving us some of your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe. I'm happy to get fans, introduced to Tim Settle, the guy that is Tim Settle. Fans are gonna love him.
Awesome. Well, so let's go right back to 2018 when Washington made him a 5th-round pick. And, what do you remember about his arrival? What were the expectations? And the reason I'm curious about that is because, he's a local guy, a 5-star recruit out of Virginia, and then he went to Virginia Tech for his college ball. And so I'm guessing there was some hype there that existed despite him being a mid-day 3 pick.
Yeah, there's always hype kind of when you have these hometown guys. There's always going to be a little bit of buzz, no matter if they're day 1, day 2, or day 3 guys. But when he was initially selected, and Washington at the time was running a 3-4 defense under Greg Minuski, he came in as this bigger bodied, supposedly nose tackle, and guys that wanted to play the zero tech. And you looked at the guys in front of him, and Deron Payne and Matt Ioannidis were already there, and they had guys like Ziggy Hood and Stacey McGee and Caleb Brantley. And when he was taken, it was just kind of I'm not really sure where Tim Settle's going to fit in. And that was kind of the story of his career, his 4-year tenure in Washington, of where the snap's going to come from. When is he going to be able to get on the field? It came out of Tech of a guy, a little bit of a sloppier build, came out of school hovering around 335 pounds, a lot of baby fat on him. And even when I was able to watch him at Stonewall Jackson in high school, grew up about 15 minutes away from that school. He was kind of the same guy that he was at Tech, that he was at Stonewall Jackson, a guy that was able to just consistently win with just how big he was, with his mass, with his power. And, when he initially came out of school and Washington made him, a 5th-round pick, it was just kind of like, how is he going to be able to get on the field?
Yeah, and I know that was kind of an issue for a long time. And I'm glad you mentioned the weight stuff because he showed up to Virginia Tech over 360 pounds. He wound up playing the 2 seasons that he was on the field as non-redshirt seasons, around 330, 329 at the combine.
Right.
But then he got down to like 299 midway through the 2018 season, if I'm not mistaken, and then kind of stayed between 300 and 310. And so he's had a body transformation, but it's been a consistently sustained effort, dating back to his arrival at Tech to this point in his NFL career. And so I know he's talked a lot about his diet and cutting out bread and just really dialing into the nutrition side and what it takes to be a player in the NFL. And so did you have any insight on what he went through in terms of cutting weight and, being able to maintain that now for several years?
Yeah, when he initially came into Washington, it was, look, you're going to have to lose this weight or you're not going to be on the football team. And I think when you hear that, it doesn't matter. You're a 5-star recruit in high school. You're the guy in college. When you get the NFL, it's a completely different story and you get inside a locker room. And he knew that he was going to have to cut 25, 30, 35 pounds to be able to get on the field. And he knew initially that those snaps would be, hard to come by. So it was a lot of nutrition. It was a lot of working out. It was a lot of extra work. He was consistently one of the last guys on the field, running sprints, getting in extra work. And even one of the biggest things I saw, and it's kind of it's away from his weight regimen, I guess his nutrition, but he was a guy that always was just working on the smaller details to refine his game to be able to get on the field. And you look at his hand movements, and he would always stay after with Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne. They would have a martial arts guy come into practice, and they'd be working 10, 15 minutes every single day after practice to refine his hand technique. And those are just the smaller things that you can see in a guy like Tim Settle, to where he's going to do everything possible to get himself on the field and have an impact.
Yeah, I remember watching him at Virginia Tech, and those flashes were so exciting. And you're like, wow, this guy's just big, and he's light on his feet for such a big guy. I'm sure the athletic testing that we saw at the combine is not really reflective of the athlete he is now, right, considering he's 30 pounds less and is really dialed into, what it takes to be an NFL player. But I remember just being watching a player that was reliant on size, power, and athleticism, and the technique piece was missing. And I can see that starting to come for him in the NFL. And so again, over 4 seasons in Washington, the story really is that he didn't get on the field that much. He played in every game except for one. He was
Mhm.
active, but he had just 2 starts, and throughout the course of 4 years played about 25% of the snaps for the Washington defense. So for those unfamiliar with what Washington has up front, tell us about that defensive line rotation and how he kind of fit into that equation.
Yeah. For those unfamiliar, time to make your way from under the rock that you're under. But on the edge they got Chase Young and Montez Sweat, and in the middle they got guys like Daron Payne, John Allen, and Matt Ioannidis. And Allen and Payne were first round selections. Payne was a first round selection in 2018, the same draft that Tim Settle came into. And as Tim kind of moved throughout his years, I think he definitely improved. But when you have two first round guys in front of you, and they bring in a depth guy like Matt Ioannidis as a day 2 pick, it's hard to get snaps. It just really is. And for Tim throughout his career, it was always just, when's he gonna be able to get on the field because he's gonna have an impact. And I think a crazy stat that really stands out with Tim is that over the last 2 years, he's had 9 TFLs and 25% of defensive snaps. And you look at a guy like Daron Payne, he's had 13 the last 2 years
Mm.
combined, and 75, 80% of defensive snaps. So you can kind of see the impact that Tim Settle has, both as a pass rusher and being able to push the pocket consistently when he gets not just one-on-one situations, but he's able to work with double teams as well. And then being able to wrangle down ball carriers outside the hashes where he has that sneaky quickness and that footwork that you prior mentioned.
So Ryan, you mentioned that he showed up to Washington and it was initially like a 3-4 scheme. And obviously Ron Rivera comes into town and that shifts. Do you remember any comments that he made about the switch in scheme, or if you thought he was more comfortable in the even front?
Well, for him, initially just coming in too as looking upon as a zero tech nose tackle at 330 plus pounds, and then when Minuski left and they brought Jack Del Rio in to kind of bring that even front in, allow those D tackles to eat up one on ones, and allow guys on the outside to kind of get better matchups. I don't personally, when as I got to know Tim just a little bit, he was just a guy like I mentioned. He's a guy that was able to just do anything and adjust. It didn't matter how he's going to be able to get on the field. I know we'll get to it in a little bit about whether he fits best as a 1 tech or a 3 tech in an even front for the Bills. But he was just a guy, if he was on the field, he was going to wreak havoc. And whether it was double teams or, pushing pocket in the pass or work around guys in the run game, he was just consistently effective. And he has, that fresh tread on the tires, as we like to say, and fresh legs coming into Buffalo.
Yeah, just 24 years old, turns 25 this summer. Let's talk about that skill set, Ryan. I know all about watching him at Virginia Tech, but you certainly have the upper hand in watching him over the last 4 years in Washington. And so, from those exposures, tell us what's the good, what's the bad, and then, of course, would love your thoughts on if he's more of a 1 tech or 3 tech or a guy that is interchangeable.
Yeah, so let's start with the bad. To be completely honest with you, with such a little amount of snaps that he had, it really wasn't allow us to get a clear window of what really the bad was because he had such a small workload. And if he got 7, 8 snaps a game, 2 or 3 of those were on special teams. But when he was in the game, he was able to consistently draw attention and wreak havoc in the pocket. He was consistently able to do that. But weaknesses right now, I would say, he continues to work with his hands and his stamina as well. Because if he comes into Buffalo and they ask him to play 55, 60% of the snaps, whether he's trying to work as a potential 3-down guy, I know that's kind of a rare occurrence in Leslie Frazier's defense, or they could ask him to come and just be, first or second down guy. How will his stamina, kind of play out for a guy that wasn't able to really come on the field and play a lot of snaps in Washington, be able to see how is he going to tire out. And that's kind of the story around Jordan Davis from Georgia right now. Is he going to be able
Yeah.
to kind of keep up that stamina? And then the strengths, first and foremost, Bills fans, he's going to outplay his contract within the first few months of the season. You can, record this, put it out everywhere. When he gets his first sack in Buffalo in the first few weeks, or he's wrangling down ball carriers behind the line of scrimmage, and also you'll be able to see the Tim Settle penguin dance, which if you're
Oh,
not familiar to,
I'm not.
oh, you'll love it, Joe. You'll love
Okay.
it. One of the best
Okay.
celebrations in football. But back on track here. Tim Settle can do a lot of things right along the defensive line. When he was in high school and when he was at Virginia Tech, it would be his ability to slide up and down the defensive line. He was underutilized in Washington. It really was a disservice to his ability. Sometimes when politics get involved in football and you got guys like Payne, Allen, and Ioannidis in front of you, and you're just not able to get on the field, we see a lot of times where guys go from different spots to different teams and enjoy success. And I think Tim Settle will have a lot of success in Buffalo.
All right. So that's pretty exciting there. Um, so as you do forecast him to Buffalo, right? The snaps are available. That's kind of the difference. And I talked about the primary need for the Bills entering free agency being the need to upgrade the interior defensive line. And with the signing of Tim Settle and as well as Daquan Jones, I feel like they've really answered those questions. And so how do you see him fitting in? Ed Oliver's in town. They signed Daquan Jones. Starlo Tulele's a wild card. There's
Mhm.
some speculation that he could retire. Availability's been an issue for him of late. So just your expectations projecting him to this defense, and then just anything else that you might have to tell us from a fan perspective of what the fans can expect from Tim Settle.
Yeah, I think pigeonholing him right now, to be completely honest, as a 1 or 3 tech would be kind of doing a disservice to Tim's ability. He has shown the ability in Washington along that even front to play a lot of different techniques and have them, play them with success. And whether he's running stunts in games or he's taking on double teams, he can do so many different things along the defensive line. And you put a guy like Ed Oliver next to him, and you have a guy like Gregory Rousseau, who I know we had our differences back in last April when the Bills took him. But you bring up a guy like Tremaine Edmonds or the line of scrimmage or Matt Milano. That's a heck of a front seven. And by no means am I comparing Tim Settle to some of the best 1 or 3 techniques in football. But when you have better players around you, and they say competition breeds success. Tim Settle has such fresh tread on the tires at 24 years old, and the splash plays that he had in Washington, it just makes me believe he's going to have an immediate impact in Buffalo.
Ryan, I just heard you rave about Tim Settle for like 10 minutes here.
I know.
How'd this guy get a
I love me some Tim Settle.
he's 24 years old. He signed a 2-year, $9 million deal. Why was he available?
Look, it's whether he was in Washington or whether he was someone else where he found himself just in a room, crowded for snaps. Washington was like, hey, we're gonna bring in all these assets on our front four, and you have a guy like Tim Settle, and you're just like, we're not gonna be able to get him any snaps. But then I'm sitting here saying, oh, he's this and he's that.
Yeah.
If he was that good, why isn't he on the field? I can't answer. I can't answer that. That was the main question flying around Washington when he was there. He was consistently impactful when he was on the football field. In between the hashes, is a completely different guy. And also, I think the biggest thing about Tim and what matters, especially for a team like Buffalo, who most likely is Super Bowl bound in these next couple of years, is a guy in the community and the guy in the locker room that teams and fans are going to absolutely fall in love with. One of the most humble, nicest human beings I've run into in my time with Washington and in the NFL media landscape, and just a hard worker, consistently with nose to the grindstone. And he's going to do whatever, Leslie Frazier and Sean McDermott ask him to do along that front four.
Ryan, let me sneak one final thing in here.
Of course.
I think there's a reasonable belief that Kyle Allen, former Washington quarterback, could come to Buffalo to back up Josh Allen. And if that happens, I'll bug you and we'll do a full 10, 15-minute conversation on Kyle Allen. But the Bills need a backup quarterback. Josh Allen's the only quarterback on the roster. You don't want to be one snap away from some day 3 draft pick stepping into
Right.
your Super Bowl caliber situation.
Right.
So just any quick thoughts that you could offer us on Kyle Allen as a potential QB2 in Buffalo?
Yeah, when healthy, he looked like an option in Washington to where he kind of play out the QB1 role, where he at times took the role away from Taylor Heineke earlier in the year. And why not have a Josh Allen and a Kyle Allen? And if you look at Kyle, kind of his skill set, that he showed in Carolina, and then you kind of compare that to Josh Allen on a much lower level, a guy that's be able to deliver downfield and a guy that's be able to work outside the pocket, and a veteran, a guy that started, a guy that's backed up. It's just so important to have those backup guys that in an emergency situation, if Josh Allen were to go down, a guy like Kyle to come in and step in and holster the workload for a game or two or potentially longer. There may not be a better option like that right now in the open market.
And it's probably an economic option as well.
Right.
Ryan, this has been a pleasure. I appreciate you giving us some of your time to talk about Tim Settle.
Of course.
And like I said, we'll bug you if Kyle Allen comes to town, but really appreciate you giving us your time and sharing your insight.
Always. Thank you, Joe.